Welcome to Magnificat TV News, dedicated to offering the news of the Church. Today is Wednesday, May 11, 2022, and these are our news. The Pope has given an interview in an Italian newspaper that has stirred up controversy both with the Orthodox Patriarch of Moscow and with NATO. A draft of the U.S. Supreme Court document regarding very restricted abortion practices has been leaked to the press. Following the release of the U.S. Supreme Court's draft anti-abortion ruling, attacks have been launched against the Catholic Church. The European Parliament has passed a motion condemning religions that do not accept abortion and gender ideology. The Church has protested. The Bishop of Copenhagen has criticized the German Synod and warned the bishops of that country that they are moving towards a break with the rest of the Church. Controversy has erupted following the Pope's statement to an Italian newspaper. Both the Patriarch of Moscow and NATO have felt accused.
In an interview published by the newspaper Corriere della Sera, Pope Francis revealed that he has asked to travel to Moscow to meet with the Russian President, Vladimir Putin, to ask him to stop the war in Ukraine, but he has not yet received a reply and doesn't believe he will receive one. Regarding NATO's role in this conflict, the Pope says that perhaps NATO's barking at Russia's door has pushed the Russian leader to start the conflict. A fury that I do not know how to say if it was provoked, but facilitated perhaps yes. This statement has upset NATO, which has felt accused of being to blame for the outbreak of the war. As to whether it is licit for countries to send weapons to Ukraine to defend itself from invasion, the Pope does not want to answer, but he does state, "What is clear is that weapons are being tested in that land. The Russians now know that tanks are of little use and are thinking of other things. Wars are fought for this, to test the weapons we have produced." And he adds, "The arms trade is a scandal. Few oppose it." The Pontiff denies that the Patriarch of Moscow can collaborate to convince Putin because in the conversation they had the first 20 minutes, he read him all the justifications for the war. The Pope reproached him for this attitude and told him that he shouldn't be a chaplain at Putin's orders, but that he should work for peace. As expected, the Moscow Patriarchate immediately protested, regretting the Pope's view of the conversation held by the two on March 16th. Pope Francis chose an incorrect tone to convey the content of this conversation, and what he has said is based on interpretations that cause regret and misunderstanding, the Patriarchate spokesman said.
A draft of the U.S. Supreme Court ruling has been leaked, according to which abortion will no longer be considered a right.
Thanks to a security breach at the Supreme Court, the portal Politico has leaked the contents of a ruling that, if confirmed, could end the era of abortion as it has been known in the United States, as it would overturn Roe v. Wade. The ruling Roe was egregiously wrong from the start, writes Justice Samuel Alito in the court's draft ruling dated February 10th, according to Politico, a Washington-based online media outlet. The decision is not final, but the leaked draft opinion has 4 justices, Clarence Thomas, Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett, joining Alito, while 3, Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan, dissenting. We hold that Roe and Casey should be overturned. The Constitution makes no reference to abortion, and no such right is impliedly protected by any constitutional provision. And he concludes that it is time to heed the Constitution and return the abortion question to the elected representatives of the people. No draft court ruling in modern history has ever been filibustered in this manner. What has happened has been labeled as an effort to intimidate the Supreme Court into keeping current pro-abortion legislation in place.
The response of abortionists to the possible U.S. Supreme Court ruling against abortion has been to attack and threaten the Catholic Church.
Abortion activists threaten to raise hell in Catholic churches across the country with protests and violence after learning of the U.S. Supreme Court's draft anti-abortion ruling. Pro-life pregnancy centers and pro-life advocates have already been subjected to vandalism, violence, and harassment this week in response to the news. At least one Catholic church has been as well, and it looks like there will be more in the coming days. Fox News reports that at least 2 pro-abortion groups are calling for churches, especially Catholic churches, to be targeted for outrage by abortion activists. Raise your voice and raise hell. Silence is your seal of approval, states their website. Abortion on demand and no apologies, says one of the pro-abortion groups. CBS News reported that at least 2 police officers were injured when a pro-abortion demonstration turned violent in Los Angeles. During another protest in Washington, D.C., a Daily Wire reporter witnessed abortion activists pushing, spitting, and shouting obscenities at the small group of pro-life advocates.
The European Parliament has approved a resolution condemning the rejection of religious grounds of abortion rights and the new LGBTIQ rights.
Following the approval of the European Parliament resolution against religions that do not accept gender ideology, the Secretary General of the Commission of the Bishops' Conference of the European Union has issued a statement in which he assures that it is an attack on religious freedom. The resolution includes the following paragraph: Gender-based violence and discrimination based on religious justifications persist. Women and LGBTIQ+ persons continue to suffer discrimination and violence inflicted in the name of religion. Sexual and reproductive health and rights, including abortion, are being prohibited in the name of religion. And it proposes condemnation of all acts of violence, persecution, coercion, and discrimination against persons on the basis of gender or sexual orientation or incitement, including by religious leaders or based on religious or belief motivations. After the approval of the resolution, the Secretary General of the organization that brings together the Episcopal Conferences of Europe has made the following statement: The right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, as well as the inherent right to life, are fundamental human rights recognized in international law. They are above political consensus, as their direct source is the inalienable human dignity of every human being. Any attempt to undermine the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion, and the right to life, or to subject them to newly created and non-consensual so-called human rights, including abortion, constitutes a grave violation of international law.
The Bishop of Copenhagen and President of the Scandinavian Bishops' Conference has warned the German bishops that the Synod is leading them into a schism.
Bishop Cousin, Bishop of Copenhagen and President of the Scandinavian Bishops' Conference, has reiterated his criticism of the German synodal way on the podcast of the Diocese of Dresden-Meißen. He recalls that the Germans cannot change the faith of the whole Church and also accuses them of talking too little about evangelization. Regarding the ordination of women, the exception from celibacy, or the teaching on sexuality, Bishop Cousin regrets that radical positions are being adopted in the synodal way, despite the fact that there are clear magisterial positions on the matter. The bishop considers this a threat to the unity of the Church. The Bishop of Copenhagen considers that the weakening of the practice of the faith is much older than the revelation of the abuse cases. Furthermore, he criticizes that in the German synodal way there is very little talk of evangelization and catechesis.
Our editorial this week is dedicated on commenting the possible consequences of a U.S. Supreme Court ruling against abortion.
In the United States, and not only there, some have become very nervous, and others have exulted with joy at that leaking of a draft Supreme Court ruling that would deprive abortion of the concept of a right. This, of course, if it comes to pass, would be a great success for the pro-life movement and a great failure for all those in favor of the culture of death. It must be said, first of all, that this is a draft of a sentence. It's not something definitive yet. Secondly, it must be recognized that this leak is a self-serving leaking. It's the first time that a leak of a sentence of the U.S. Supreme Court occurs, and it's known who are behind it, those who do not want abortion to stop being considered a right, those who are in favor of the culture of death, those who are naturally also in favor of the business that is done with the remains of abortion, of the child that is murdered. Those were not going to stop with such a small thing as leaking a news. They have done it knowing that it would cause social disorder and thus try to coerce the judges of the Supreme Court, telling them, if you approve this repeal of abortion as a right, there will be many problems and therefore do not do it. I believe that this is a decisive moment in the struggle for life, and in the end it's a decisive moment in the struggle for democracy throughout the Western world. Abortion is a crime. But what is worse is that it's also considered a right. This consideration of abortion as a right also makes it impossible to even protest against abortion. And not only that you cannot protest with something as peaceful as praying the rosary in front of abortion clinics, but you cannot even try to change legislation because it's a right. And that's where the heart of the problem lies. Those of the culture of death, I insist, who are also very friendly with the business of death, of what they do with the sale of the remains of murdered children, those of the culture of death are very angry. They have shown their aggressiveness. They have even threatened, as they have done this week, to attack Catholic parishes in the United States, which would not be a novelty, at least in countries like Argentina and Chile, which periodically suffer these attacks against Catholic parishes. But for them, I insist, the main problem is not only not to end abortion as a right, but the main problem is that it will prevent them from implementing the new world order they are seeking to institute. If abortion ceases to be a right, then it no longer makes sense that, for example, everything that is linked to gender ideology is also a right. That is to say, the new rights are at stake, new false rights that they are trying to implement. For example, a bill is being debated in the European Parliament that would prohibit, in the name of religious freedom, to go against abortion and gender ideology, because they say religious freedom, being a right, cannot go against the right to abortion and the right to gender ideology. New rights have been invented that restrict, even eliminate the previous rights. The real human rights are being little by little eliminated, crushed, restricted by these new human rights, completely false. This is so serious that even an institution that doesn't usually defend important martyrs and only does so from time to time, such as the Commission of the European Episcopal Conferences, has come out and said that if this law is approved in the European Parliament, it will be going against the right to freedom of thought, freedom of conscience, and religious freedom. Because it's not that abortion is already a right and that conscientious objection, this next great enemy to be defeated, is something forbidden, and therefore medical professionals are obliged to perform abortions. It's not even the power to speak against it. Not only in the political sphere, in a homily, in a catechism, you will not be able to speak against abortion, or you will not be able to speak against gender ideology, because if you do it, you will be going against human rights, these new and false human rights. For a long time, it's been insisted that those of us who believe that truth exists, that truth is absolute, that there is no half-truths or quarter-truths, but that truth is or is not, that truth exists and we can know it. It's been insisted that we are enemies of democracy, that to say that something is true is to go against coexistence, and therefore that the religions that we believe that we have the truth, not an aspect of the truth or part of the truth, but the full truth, especially we Catholics, are the great enemies of democracy because we become intolerant people. For a long time we have been accused of being people who cause conflicts and wars of religion. For a long time it's been said that the true Democrat is a relativist, and that only the relativist, that is to say the one who does not consider anything as absolute or definitive, but that it's my opinion and that's it, you have yours and I have mine, only the relativist, the one who does not believe in the existence of truth, only he is a true Democrat who allows coexistence. Now they are taking off their masks. They are showing what they are, dictators. They are the enemies of democracy, and they are making of that phrase of the 60s, forbidden to forbid, they are making their battle instrument to put an end to all dissidents. I repeat, not only with conscientious objection, but even with the right to think and to express what you think, even in the most intimately religious sphere. Democracy is in danger in the hands of these friends and merchants of death. Western culture is in danger because these new false rights will be imposed and will put an end to the real human rights. But there is one thing that is not in danger. It's what they seek above all, and they will not get it. There is one thing that is not in danger. Our faith is not in danger. Certainly will suffer, will have to return to the catacombs, and some or many of us will be thrown to the new lions that are the media, to be crushed with their teeth. Surely this will happen. But just as 2,000 years ago, will win again. Because those of the culture of death, only know how to destroy, only know how to kill, only know how to build on ruins. And nothing solid can be built on ruins. And just as 2,000 years ago we defeated those of the culture of death who killed Christians in the circuses of Rome, we'll do the same now, although perhaps 300 years of persecution will have to pass as it was then. But in the meantime, Western culture, of course, will have been ruined, and a new culture will be born based on the gospel, on that sense of freedom, and on the dignity of the person taught to us by Jesus Christ. Until next week, God willing.
If you wish to be up to date about what is happening in the church, you can follow us on our news page, www.magnificat.tv. See you the next following weeks, God willing.